Here are 8 tips to training with ADHD from a strength coach who has ADHD.
Rip and tear until it is done.
Even before I was diagnosed with ADHD, I had implemented these strategies into my workouts to keep me on track. While this video was recorded for people with ADHD in mind, there are some nuggets of gold for anyone who just wants to keep their training interesting. So skip to the timestamp if you just want to see the tips. So why does ADHD make exercising so difficult? ADHD comes in a variety of different flavors. Not everyone has the same symptoms or just the same general life experience with it. However, there are a few overarching things that tend to apply to people that struggle to stick to exercise who have ADHD. Number 1, patience. Exercise is a marathon, not a sprint. In order to have a sustainable relationship with fitness, you're after the little wins over a long enough period of time that add up to big progress. This often doesn't gel with the stimulant-seeking, instant sense of reward, dopamine-deprived brain of ADHD people, so it can be difficult to maintain exercise for long periods of time. Number 2, the classic, lack of focus. You struggle to stay focused on your workout, you don't get enough done, you don't get the reward or the progress that you're after, and you just give up on it. Number 3, poor planning. Most of us with ADHD are terrible planners. So if you walk into the gym, one of 2 things is going to happen. You're either going to get overwhelmed with how many options you have, or you're going to get distracted by how many options you have. Going in without a plan is a great way of spinning your wheels and getting nowhere. I hate this cliche saying, but it's totally true. Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. It's easy as that. Number 4, social anxiety. For a lot of ADHD people, you're going to be wearing a mask day to day in order to go under the radar undetected with what your brain is actually doing full time. Exercise is often so mentally taxing that you can't keep this mask on. You've got to go mask off. And this can lead to a lot of social anxiety because now you're in an environment where you're feeling vulnerable. This can obviously trigger anxiety and be absolute nightmare fuel for my neuroatypical brethren. And number 5, procrastination. I don't have to say much about this one. It's pretty self-explanatory and most of us deal with it far more than we should have to. Tip number 1, your phone is the enemy. It's fair to say that technology has revolutionized everything we do, and your phone exemplifies this. There is an app for everything, and some of them are incredibly useful for things like working out. However, as a person with ADHD, in order to stay focused, it's not about using willpower, it's about eliminating distractions. Your phone contains unlimited possibilities to get you sidetracked. If you're going to stop in between sets to record what you've done, odds are muscle memory is going to kick in and you're going to end up opening TikTok, falling down an attention-grabbing rabbit hole, and lo and behold, your 2-minute rest period has turned into 10 minutes. Now, I'm not saying don't use apps for training. So what's the solution for this? We're going old school. Get a notebook. If you are using an app for working out, before you start training, you take the app, look at what you have to do, and you write that in your notebook. You then put in your music, put the phone away, and just take that notebook onto the gym floor. Between sets, you can still record whatever you need to record, but you won't have the added distraction on what's happening on Instagram, who just messaged me, etc., etc. Instead, you're going to be able to auto-regulate your rest periods much better as you slowly become bored waiting to get into the next set. It's amazing what you can get done in a training session without the distraction of your phone. I'm not saying don't use an app, but when you're finished your training session, look at your notebook, transfer the notes back into your phone so that you haven't gone complete caveman mode. Or just ditch the phone altogether. Tip number 2, the 80-20 rule. Leave room for novelty. Working out by its very nature is repetitive. You don't get to bench 3 plates without benching 2 plates thousands of times. And I get this. it can get boring as hell, and boring is the kryptonite of the ADHD brain. As a coach, I'm always going to preach about consistency, proper programming, progressive overload, and repetition for long-term results. There is a part of life that you just have to embrace the suck. However, I think this only needs to make up 80% of your training. Leave 20% of novelty, and by novelty, I mean have fun. This could be whatever it needs to be. It could be exercises that you want to try. It can be learning better flexibility. Hell, at the moment, I'm trying to figure out how to use nunchucks. Does that make my squat, bench, and deadlift bigger? No, but I have fun. The best thing about this 20% is the metric you are tracking is how much fun am I having? Once it gets boring, drop it and find something else that tickles your fancy and stimulates the dopamine. Follow the dopamine. Having a perfectly optimized program is great, but this is definitely trumped by being able to consistently stick to a program because you're enjoying it. 80% optimal, 20% fun. What's not to love? Tip number 3, follow the dopamine. Hyperfixate when the opportunity presents itself. Building on from the last point, sometimes when engaging with novelty, it's going to spark that ADHD superpower. Hyperfixation, hyper-focus. What was once just a little bit of fun is now a fixation that might eclipse your entire training regime. And sometimes you have to follow that white rabbit, see where it goes. It should be noted that I do recommend following fixations that do somewhat tie into your long-term training goal, but it doesn't have to. It's your life. Enjoy it. As long as you're training, keep going. For instance, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I was once obsessed with powerlifting. I lived and breathed it. I consumed everything I could do, from programming to what the athletes are doing to every little nuance that the sport had to offer. That hyperfixation did dry up. I've also pursued Olympic lifting, strongman, and a host of things in between. But at the end of the day, I always come back to my fundamentals, and that's my personal love of strength training. These are all just different facets. A result of having all these hyperfixations over the last 10 years of my training career is I might not be an elite powerlifter, but I'm a pretty well-rounded athlete at a multitude of different things. I've enjoyed my training for the last 10 years, and I don't think sticking to powerlifting over the last 10 years, even if it would make me 10, maybe 20% stronger than I am now, would literally have given me the same rewards as experimenting with all these different training modalities. Fitness is a buffet. Try it all if you want to. It's also made me a highly experienced coach, and because of this variety of training modalities I've engaged in, I can really find what works with individual people. So sometimes you just gotta follow these moments and find out where they take you. As this saying goes, jack of all trades, master of none, but that's often better than a master of one. Tip number 4, take advantage of the clock. If you have ADHD, odds are your time management sucks. I often refer to this as time traveling, when you're supposed to take like a 2-minute break and suddenly you're 15 minutes into the future without a reasonable explanation on how you got there. This is obviously a real problem when it comes to training. So why not just take the timekeeping responsibilities out of your hand and give it to the clock? Use time protocols such as EMOMs, which is every minute on the minute. Set time windows such as using 15 minutes to work up to your training max. AMRAPs, which is as many reps as possible or as many rounds as possible in a certain amount of time. Use these time barriers like Lego blocks to construct a workout in a given timing frame that gets everything done that you need to get done. If you're not going to be accountable for your time, the clock might as well be. Tip number 5, create or find the perfect training environment. This might be the most important training tip that I can give. Odds are your standard commercial gym is an overpacked sensory explosion that is impossible to maintain a productive level of focus. Whether you're overwhelmed by too many people or distracted by too many options, finding the perfect environment that's going to keep you in your zone and on task is imperative to the success of training with ADHD. Don't just choose a training facility based on convenience and price. Actually enter the environment and take notes of what it is doing to you on a sensory level. A commercial gym may work, but you might have to look at something that's more private or boutique, something like Strength Block. Also, if you're in a privileged position, you might be able to create your own training space, such as a garage gym. I am a huge advocate of the garage gym. I had one for years before opening Strength Block, and it was my space. There were no rules. The only thing that went into designing my garage gym is making sure that my clients had what they needed and I stayed motivated in the environment. Tip number 6, find your swole mate, train with a friend. Most people are going to benefit from a training partner, and this is particularly true for people with ADHD. However, you do have to make sure that you're choosing the correct training partner. Someone who is supportive and is somewhat aware of your pitfalls and your quirks and all the stuff that can prevent you from staying productive in the gym. The social aspect of training with someone adds a level of accountability while also keeping you engaged and your brain stimulated, but they also need to be able to pull your focus back into making sure that you're getting done what needs to be done in the gym. This doesn't mean you need like a neurotypical training partner. You just need to have an agreement that you check in on each other throughout the workout to make sure that you're staying focused and that you are moving on to the next task at hand. Like I said, training is supposed to be fun, so whoever you're training with should be a fun person. Just make sure you're still working out. Tip number 7, create a deadline by competing. Now, this one is not going to be for everyone, but for a particular breed of person, this might be your secret weapon. If you have ADHD, we all know about deadline mode, your ability to increase your output when you have a deadline. A competition is a deadline. It can help you laser focus on your goals and take your training to the next level. I have been training for over 10 years. And the biggest leaps I have made in my own progress is when I have a competition coming up. Having a competition sets that deadline that makes me work harder, stay focused, and prioritize my fitness. Not only does it give me some hyperfixation while training, the idea of my rejection dysphoria syndrome kicking in because I underperformed on the day is way too great for me to procrastinate and undertrain. It keeps me accountable to the deadline. Competitions can be the fuel required for you to stay on track. Tip number 8, and this is going to sound like some shameless self-promotion, but hire a coach or a personal trainer. If you haven't noticed, all of these tips aren't about overcoming through sheer willpower your symptoms of ADHD. It's about removing the triggers that prevent you from having a sustainable relationship with your fitness goals. Things like lack of accountability, lack of time management, not knowing what to do, not feeling comfortable in the environment. A good personal trainer or a coach will take care of all of these. An experienced coach is going to be able to hone in on everything that you enjoy with fitness and tailor-make the experience to suit you. If your personal trainer is unable to do this, quite frankly, they're a crap personal trainer. This covers everything from exercise selection and programming through to making sure that your goals are actually goals that are going to keep you interested. And finally, if their coaching style matches how you like to train, it'll create a comfortable training environment where you never feel lost or unmotivated. So there are my 8 tips for creating a sustainable relationship with exercise when you have ADHD. Now, it should be noted that I only got diagnosed with ADHD in the last 6 months. This journey is still very, very new to me, and I will post a link to the blog down below in which I kind of break down how that happened. So these tips are based on me retroactively looking over the last 10 to 15 years of my training career and figuring out what helped me manage to create my sustainable relationship with specifically strength training and how it really became ingrained into my lifestyle. I'm at a point now that if I don't train, if I take a week off, I know it's not going to turn into months or years. I actively want to go back to it. And that is a place where I believe most people can get to. that place where the exercise no longer becomes you trying to trick yourself into doing it, but rather becomes something that you crave doing. Sometimes you will need a break from it, whether it's lifestyle or you do burn out a little bit, but you know that you'll always return back to it. I'm never worried that if I stop, I'm not going to be able to start again. I will always get back into it. Part of that for me has been switching up training modalities, practicing new programming, and I understand I am a bit of a nerd for this stuff. I wouldn't be a strength coach if I wasn't. So if you want to pass the responsibility to someone that's been doing this for a long time, someone that, again, understands people with ADHD, even though it's a recent revelation, I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out why my habits form in the way they have. And so the ADHD was just kind of like, oh, this makes sense. It all fell in place. But I've been actively trying to figure this out for my entire life. And I think I've done pretty well considering. So if you fall into that category, make sure you subscribe. I'm going to keep on bringing out more ADHD and training content as I figure out more of it, because I believe I'm in a pretty unique position in order to provide some insight into what can work and what can't work. So subscribe to this channel so I can keep you updated. Also feel free to check out my personal website, www.damianlifts.co.nz, as well as my gym's website, www.strengthblock.co.nz, and I will see you guys in the next video.